So yes, a warm welcome, a good morning to all of you on this weekend. Our topic for today is about building security awareness program. Our expert today is Ger Van Hees, and if I said that correctly, sorry if I mispronounced it. So a brief introduction about our expert today is he's been into the information security domain for quite some time, close to a decade and a half. And he comes with a plethora of experience. He's worked across with different designations with big brands like Westpac and Reserve Bank of New Zealand, as various job designations from consultant security monitoring to information security assurance analyst. And currently he heads the Good Security Awareness company as an information security awareness specialist. As far as his qualification is concerned, he finished off his degree in MTS Electronica, and his latest was a master's degree in computer security from University of Liverpool. It's a pleasure to have Ger on our platform, and without any further delay, I'd request him to get the session started. Thanks, Ger, for making your presence felt. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me, and I'm honored that you give me the opportunity to speak to your audience today, which is really good. And obviously, anything that I can do to promote security awareness, I think is something that is very good to do anyway. So yeah, let's have a look at security awareness and security awareness programs in organizations, because it is a very interesting area to work in. If you're considering a career in information security and you like the idea of working with people, educating people, this is definitely an area you could work in. It's an interesting line of work. Working with people, it's all around communications and educations and psychology, right? So it's definitely super interesting. Let me share my screen with you so you can see my slides. I hope you can see my slides. Can you please confirm that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So information security, but from a human perspective. So that's really good. So yeah, a little bit about me. Thanks for the introduction anyway. So my name is Ger Van Hees. I am currently the Executive Director of Good Security Awareness, and we help organizations to optimize that level of awareness by running information security awareness programs as a service. So that's the official slogan of the company. But yeah, we basically do anything to help organizations to make people understand what security is and why you want to have good security in your organization. A lot of organizations that have incidents, like major incidents, like for example a ransomware incident, they don't, especially like small to medium-sized businesses, they don't survive, like after such a disastrous incident. So security awareness is very important amongst all employees. So what is security awareness? Like, it's a term that is, awareness is a well-known term, usually around safety, like health and safety and those kind of things. But also around, obviously, information security, we need to think about security awareness. So it's that knowledge, attitude, and awareness towards all matters concerned with security. So yeah, from passwords and antivirus and not clicking in phishing links, all these kind of things, and even including physical security, where you think about, for example, not having keeping the door open for someone who's not authorized to enter the building, and personnel security, for example, the human resources department. But yeah, for all employees, right? It's not just for the IT people, it's for all employees, from the janitor to the CEO and the board and everyone in between. Information security is important. So the goal of information security is to create and foster the security culture in the organization. And when I say security culture, I don't really mean that security should be a separate culture. It should be, security should be a core value in the culture, in the entire culture of the organization. So just as much as health and safety or diversity and inclusion would be a value in your organization, security should also be a value in the organization. So that's definitely important. It should be integrated. So if we talk about security awareness program, then a lot of people think about security. When we talk about security awareness program, we think about this mandatory security awareness e-learning thing that you have to do when you join the organization. That like a 15-minute or 20-minute training module, and you have to do that. You have to go through that video, and then you have to answer some questions, right? But it's not just that. A good security awareness program is much more than that. It's a whole raft of activities, a whole suite of all kind of different things, from writing a policy around training, thinking about the culture in the organization, thinking about communications. The training itself obviously is also important, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail later on. But also the phishing test and any kind of other measurements that you can do to measure the effectiveness of your security awareness program, and the reporting all around it, so that you can keep track of what is happening, what is the security posture in your organization, and you can report that to management and the board, and anything else you can think of to achieve that goal of creating and fostering that security culture in the organization. So it's much more than just that piece of training. It's what we call that comprehensive plan with all the activities, and thinking about the goals that you want to achieve, and all those activities that you do to achieve that goals, and all the metrics that you use around it to measure the effectiveness of your security awareness program. And those metrics are also obviously important to create your reporting. So it's much more than just the training modules itself. So you can see that if you think about all these different activities that you need to do, that the job of security awareness professional is very diverse. It can be very interesting from the psychological side, working with people, to the whole kind of technical side, where you think about things like phishing tests and learn a management system, to talking to senior management and the board, and reporting around the security culture of the organization. So it can be very interesting. The security awareness program usually starts from something small, and we talk about the different kind of maturity levels. So maturity levels, there's a couple of different ways of looking at maturity levels. This is a model that also is used by NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technologies in the United States. And they think of these different maturity levels as from non-existent, partial, informed, repeatable, all the way up to adaptive. Whereas most organizations today are at that partial stage. They have some security awareness activities in the organization. They do, for example, a security piece of security training when employees join the organization. But it's much more around compliance. They do it because they have to do it, right? There might be some kind of a regulatory requirement. Maybe they are a financial organization and they have to comply with PCI DSS. And then PCI DSS says that they have to have security awareness training for all their employees. So they do that, but it's purely because they have to be compliant with that framework or with that standard. And it helps, each kind of piece of security awareness training that is done in the organization will have a certain effect, but you want preferably the longer term kind of effect where that security culture is created and people are aware why they need to work on security and keep security top of mind. So you go through those maturity levels where the next level is the informed level where people know more about it, where you're promoting awareness and behavior change in the organization. And it works. People start to think about security. They for example, they start to create better passwords, and they start to think about locking their computer when they leave their desk. So it's definitely a good way of doing it. You want to preferably get to that stage where it is in the kind of repeatable maturity level, more long-term, integrated in the culture of the organization, like we already said. So you have security as a value in the enterprise culture, because then once it is like completely integrated, it's all the way from the CEO, the top from the board. People don't just talk the talk, but they also walk the walk. And when the top level senior management shows what it actually should look like when they do that, good desired secure behavior, then the rest of the organization will follow, because generally most employees will do what their leaders are doing also. So that's definitely a good thing to have. The highest level of maturity that we think of is the one that's called adaptive. And that means that you don't just have that long-term sustainment and culture change in the organization, but you also have metrics around it. So you continuously measure how effective your security awareness program is. So that's definitely a good one, so that when you know how effective your security awareness program is and you look at those metrics, then you can adjust where needed, right? And over time, also the context of the organization changes, things, the world changes around you. Threats that were there, like 5 years ago may no longer be here now, and something that was not here 5 years ago could be a threat now, right? Like, for example, ransomware. 5 years ago, ransomware was not a big thing. But nowadays, with the whole possibility of blockchain and cryptocurrencies, it's much easier, obviously, for attackers to use that and to have something like ransomware. And in 5 years' time, who knows what's going to be there, right? It might be artificial intelligence or something like that. So the world changes around you, and you need to adapt your security awareness program to the latest threats out there. So you need to have that whole adaptive kind of idea around your program. So that's what we try to look at when we create security awareness programs for organizations. And I'll show you in one of the later slides how we do that. So why do we want awareness? That's a question, obviously, that I ask a lot of organizations. And we want awareness because we want to have desired secure behavior. We want people to behave in such a way that they think about security, they have security top of mind. And there is this model, it's the BJ Fogg behavior model. And definitely go and have a look at that website that is mentioned here on the slide, behaviormodel.org. There's much more information on this, and BJ Fogg has written really good books, so I definitely encourage you to go and have a look there. His theory basically says that behavior happens when the motivation is there and the ability is there and the prompt, and they all come together at the same moment, right? So if you look at this diagram here, when the motivation is low, even though the ability would be there, it would be easy for someone to do the secure behavior. But if the motivation is low, then it would fail, right? Even though they would be prompted here to do a certain secure behavior, then it would still fail. But if the motivation is high and the ability is high, it's easy for them to do, then they would be in this area where if they are prompted to do some kind of secure behavior, it would succeed, right? So you have to think about what do I do to motivate people to show their secure behavior, and how easy is it for them to do that secure behavior, right? So for example, if we're talking about passwords, right, to teach people to use a good, long, strong passwords, you obviously need to have them understand why they need to do that. And if they understand that it's for the purpose of protecting their identity, for example, that will motivate them, and then the motivation will be high. And if you give them, for example, a password vault where they can store their password, they can automatically generate good passwords and store those passwords so they don't have to remember them, then it's also easy for them to do, right? So if the motivation is high and it's easy for them to do, they will be in this area where if they are prompted to create a new password, then it'll probably be successful, and they will use that tools because it's easy for them to create a good, strong password, right? So that's desired secure behavior that we want people to show. So that's an interesting model. I definitely encourage you to go and investigate a little bit more if you're interested in this kind of psychological side of things. BJ Fogg has a lot of very good content, and also he wrote a lot of very good books around around desired behavior and behavioral models. So then, as a security professional, what kind of things would you be doing? So that's definitely a good thing to know, right? If you're thinking about going into that area of information security, and what should you do to build a good security awareness program? Well, as a security awareness professional, as any kind of information security professional in general, you should think about and know what are the organization's needs around security and security awareness in this case. Like I already mentioned, it might be that there are requirements from a regulatory point of view. It might be that you are a government organization and you have certain mandatory regulations that you will have to follow. For example, where I am here in Australia, we have the Information Security Manual, and the Information Security Manual says that as a government organization, we must have an ongoing security awareness program, and we must have specific security awareness training for specific groups in the organization. So that is a regulatory requirement. And I mean, it all depends on what kind of organization you are, in what jurisdiction you are, what country you are, and there can be lots of different regulations and legislations. Right, financial organizations, for example, will have a whole complete other set of regulations to think about. For example, then building industries, right, where building industries might be probably much more thinking about physical security. rather than things like fraud and so on. So that's definitely a thing you need to think about, regulations and legislation. Another thing you would want to consider is the management buy-in. You'll have to convince management that your security awareness program is important and they need to support it. Because without management buy-in, you usually don't get any funding, and then it will be a lot more difficult to do. Yeah, it would be a good thing to have a good relationship with management, and preferably have a bit of influence there that you can use to convince them to support you and have buy-in from them and funding for the security awareness program. Also, it would be good to have that buy-in because they have to be showing that secure behavior. They have to be the leaders, and they have to show that good, awareness behavior towards the rest of the organization. The risk appetite of the organization is also something that you should think of. The organization usually is willing to bear a certain level of risk in order to pursue their objectives, the goals of the organization. They want to achieve those goals, and they're willing to take a certain amount of risk. And yeah, the more risk they're willing to take, the kind of the level of security will be different, rather than an organization that is not willing to take a lot of risk. Then there will be much more security. So that's something to keep in mind. The culture of the organization, I already mentioned that. If you have a good feel for the culture of the organization, you kind of know what type of training you can put out there. The different audiences, for example, if you have IT staff and developers, they would need a whole other approach to security awareness rather than for example a financial part, a financial team in the organization. And yeah, cover the biggest risk first, right? Think about what is it that we have organization, what is that particular type of service that I am delivering to my customers, and what is the biggest risk that I have, and see if you can have your security awareness program around that. Because if your security awareness program aligns with the business goals, and the business and senior management sees that you do that to support the business goals, that it will be probably also much more inclined to give you that support that you need. Yeah, so the organizational needs, very interesting and very important to know. Then the security awareness training itself, because that's obviously a very important part of your whole security awareness program, and maybe even the biggest part. You should consider thinking to create a baseline training for everyone if you don't have any training at all currently. Something that everyone does, from the janitor up to the CEO, so that everybody is on that kind of same baseline, that same starting level, knowing the basic things, the fundamentals of security. Should be well known by everyone. Use good passwords, don't click phishing links, those kind of things, the basic things. It should be an ongoing campaign, so that everyone that new joins the organization, that is onboarded, would have that same baseline training. Then after that, have regular updates, regular pieces of training throughout the year. We call it advanced persistent training, APT. There is also advanced persistent threats, but this is the opposite, advanced persistent training. And we like to think that we give people more options, more content they can consume. So you have the mandatory part, and then there is just more for people to learn if they want to learn it. And yeah, and it should be kind of a gradual level, so people can start to learn more difficult things. You kind of challenge them to learn more. People like to learn more and be a little bit challenged. So it should be just a little bit outside of their reach of knowledge. People like to learn new things. Focused on specific groups, I already mentioned that. So have training for IT people, have training for financial people, have training for human resources, all kinds of different pieces of training for different groups and different channels and timelines. Think about your regular email updates. Think about your online training, your computer-based training with your surveys and your questions. Think about videos. Think about maybe something like almost like TV show kind of content. Maybe a newsletter, anything you can think of, all kind of different channels and also different timelines. Something that people can do kind of on demand, but also something that is sent out maybe like once a month or once every 2 months. Different timelines out there. Use all kind of different visuals, sounds, stories, emotions. You want to make it as diverse as possible, so that everyone can get what kind of feels best to them. What is priority? Well, that kind of determines. That's kind of determined by, like I already said, the need of your organization, but also maybe by what is currently happening in the world. So if there's any kind of current events, then you might want to think about putting a piece of awareness content out there around that current event. So that's something to keep in mind. A good tip there is to use a complete platform, right? Use a platform like a learner management system or some kind of system that does everything, that has all this kind of content in it, that gives you that possibility to show videos, to show content-based, computer-based training, to send out these emails, to send out surveys. Have it if you can have it within one platform, because it saves you a lot of time and it saves you a lot of effort. And also because it's all in one platform, it gives you this ease of doing reporting around it. And you don't have to kind of get all these pieces of information from all over the place. So that's definitely a good way of doing it. There's lots of different platforms out there. And then testing, like once you have done this awareness program, this awareness training, you want to test the efficacy, the effectiveness of your training. So it is really important to test what the awareness level in the organization looks like. I usually do a initial kind of baseline test with organizations where we start to work with. Before we do any training, we do like a baseline phishing test to get an idea of the level of awareness. How many people are falling for a phishing test, for like a social engineering kind of test. And then once you've done that, you start the awareness training, and then what we like to do is a monthly phishing tests within different kind of levels of difficulty. We do, for example, also do USB key drops. So we have, like an infected USB key that we leave somewhere in the office or in the parking lot, or anything like that, so that if people pick it up and plug it into their computer, then the awareness platform will register that, and we know that somebody has probably not thought about not using strange USB keys in their computers, right? And that would have been part of the security awareness training that we had done before that, right? So to kind of measure the effect of that training. Phishing is an important one too that you can use with testing. That's all around having voice, like phone calls with people and having them kind of trying to prompt them to give out information like a PIN code or something like that, or their date of birth, or something like that. And yes, simulated social engineering attacks. So there are companies out there that can help you and use like social engineering tests, right? So to just call people and try to get them to disclose information, or even like walk up to an organization and try to get in, by trying to get someone to open the door for them, and all the way maybe even getting into the server room if possible. So, but definitely interesting. Use a specialized organization for that. There are many of them out there that do this, like physical, social engineering kind of tests. But yeah, definitely testing is really important. And if you can also make it like a just-in-time training, right? Especially with phishing, with a phishing platform. If somebody gets a phishing test email and clicks that link, you could kind of send them to a page where they get some additional information and maybe like a short video. And later on, maybe you can invite them for a little bit of more kind of training to give them a little bit more support, and then teach them a little bit more about what they should not do and what they could do to replace that. So testing is absolutely important. Already talked about that adaptive plan. Remember that when I spoke about these different maturity levels. This is sort of what it looks like, what we do for organizations. So we talk to the organization and we think about making a plan. The blue part here is where we have a calendar here, and we create a plan for the next 6 months. And then like every 3 months we review it, and then we plan the next 6 months, and so we go on and on and on. The green part is where we think about, okay, what in that quarter, what kind of security awareness training are we going to do? So for example, here we talk about USB attacks. So we do a piece of awareness training around USB attacks. And then with the yellow here, we reinforce it with a poster, for example, that organizations then can put on the walls in their offices. And then in the next month, we do a test, right? We do a phishing test, for example, and we do a USB drop, right? To kind of measure the effectiveness of that piece of training that we had in the month before. And we do a lunch event. We have some extra activities there, and like at the bottom row, for example, a lunch event or a newsletter or something like that. So we do these different things. We do the testing and the analyzing. We do a plan, right? And we regularly review the plan. We do the training part, and we do the reinforcements. And so this is kind of the entire security awareness program in a calendar, right? So that's kind of what it looks like. And the adaptiveness is in this planning and reviewing part, right? So every half year we plan what we're going to do in the next half year, and then we review it regularly. So if something changes in the world, if something changes in the organization, we can adapt, and we can continuously make sure that we keep giving everyone the right amount of security knowledge and security awareness training. The metrics, like we already said, if you're in that adaptive level, you definitely need to test, and you need to think about what you're going to measure, right? So there is many things you can measure. So that's why we call it many meaningful metrics. But for example, you can think about the number of security incidents, right? And not just the number of security incidents that happen, because incidents will happen. That you might see that they go down over time if you do good security awareness training. But also you want to know how many security incidents are being reported by people, because people that have a good security awareness level, that have security on top of mind, will be much more inclined to report something which they think that it could be a security incident. So you see a higher level of reporting. Also, would be good if you have, for example, a button in your email program where people can click. If they see a phishing email, they can click that button and report that phishing email to the security operations team. Another thing you could measure is the passwords, right? Are there any poor passwords in the organization? You could run some kind of tool to try to crack the passwords in the system to see if anybody uses, the kind of well-known bad passwords, like you take like the top 1,000, most used bad passwords, for example, and you see if your organization has any of those. The number of clicks in a phishing email, that's something that you can test for. And you can look at your technology, right? At your devices, like your SIEM, your security incident and event management tool, your intrusion detection system. You can look at your logs of your Active Directory, where people, you can see their password, the login attempts, for example. All those kind of things. There's many things you can measure to determine, what is the effect of your security awareness program on your employees. And then some tips and tricks. Work with human nature, right? It's just that if you work with human nature, so if people like to have things easy, right? People don't like to do hard things. People have this idea of doing things that are easy, do quick. They have like the shortcuts, that they want to do. So it make security such that it uses that idea, like make it easy for people, like, if they need to create good passwords, for example, make sure that they have a good, password generator that can create such a password for them, and make sure then that these passwords are automatically stored, right? So that they don't have to remember them. So you have to work with human nature and make it easier for them, instead of requiring this whole complex password for them. And so they have to remember it, but there's no way for that to store it. So they're gonna start writing it down, right? So that's an example there. To get buy-in from management, for example, if it is difficult for you to find, to get in touch with that management, to get in touch with the chief information security officer or the CEO, maybe see if you can use an influencer, right? Somebody that is around them in their kind of area, maybe an assistant, or maybe somebody in the comms team or something like that, that has regular contacts with those person, and try to create a relationship with them, and then ask them at some point to introduce you to that senior manager. So use an influencer to get to the top. And yeah, talking about the comms department, use all the resources that you have in the organization. What I see a lot is that the security awareness work in the organization is given to the IT department. Because the security function is usually also sort of in the IT department, but security awareness is much more around communications and psychology and education. So it would be good to use people that have those kind of skills, right? If you can use the communications department, they know a lot more around communications and around human psychology and around what messaging should look like. And the marketing department, for example, could help you with creating maybe that communication so that it's much more attractive for people to look into something. And the HR department, maybe, so that you have, of course, more of an idea of what is possible in the organization, what is the culture like, and what kind of angle can you take more from a human side of things. If you can use security ambassadors or security champions, something like that, that would be a good thing. There are always certain people in an organization that are much more interested in security than others. And usually what you'll see is that those people are more of a sort of a leader type of person. And if you can get them on board, then what you'll see if they are have some level of enthusiasm for security and for security awareness, then the people around them will also start to kind of pick that up and look into it much more. So we call it culture carriers. Yeah, carrot and stick. Yeah, we call it carrot and stick, but you could, for example, like if you think about someone who clicks phishing emails, something that shows bad security behavior, you can use, the stick. You can punish them for that, right? That's not always the most effective way of getting people convinced to think about something. So it's probably it's much better to to get them to do something and have some kind of reward for them, the carrot, so that you can kind of get them to engage and get a reward for it. Rewards should be good, sort of gamification, so that if people engage, that they get rewarded for it. But rewards should be unpredictable, right? So you should have, a surprise, somebody is rewarded because he's done such a good job, but don't have any kind of like, oh yeah, every month we give someone a reward, right? Just because, yeah, we have to, and we do that every month. Because if it's unpredictable, if it's variable, it's surprising to people, and anything that is surprising, that is interesting. Right, so that's also something to keep in mind. Gamification is an interesting thing. Leaderboards, how did people score? How do they compare to others in the organization? Maybe go on a team level, or department level. How is this department doing? And comparing it with the other department, those kind of things. Have some kind of gamification there. Give people the possibility to get badges. Once they completed a piece of training, they can get a badge. Like a champion badge or something like that. People like that. So the gamification is definitely a good help. Yeah, a couple of tricks there, right? Remember, people might be aware, but they may not always care, right? So they might know about security and they might be aware of it. So you don't have to tell them anything new. They already know it, but they go like, well, I know, but I don't care. It's just I do my thing and that's it, right? So you kind of have to find something to motivate them. Yeah, creating human firewalls, that's what we call it, right? Make sure that your people know about security. The firewall, that is that device in the network that controls what kind of traffic goes in and out the network. Well, you want to do that same thing with your employees, right? You want to create human firewalls in your employees so that they know about security and they know what is good and what is bad and what to do and what not to do, right? Awareness is most important. People are your last layer of defense. Perry Carpenter, one of the people that I follow, he's always very enthusiastic about the psychology side of things. He says that it's the 8th layer. I don't know if you know, but you have this OC layer model in computers and in networking from 1 to 7, where 7 is the application layer, and then the 8th layer on top of that is the human being, right? It's the last layer of defense that you have. So make sure that helps you, that human layer, that human is your firewall. Yeah, some resources here that you could have a look at. If you want to go and certify yourself in security awareness, then there's a very brand new certification. There was not really one out there. The Security Awareness and Culture Professional by the H layer. I'm going to do the exam myself very soon. A couple of good books there. The one from Perry Carpenter is very good. It's a really good book, Transformational Security Awareness. Gardner and Thomas, Building a Security Awareness Program, and Kevin Mitnick, The Art of Deception. Kevin is one of my heroes. He's all around social engineering, and he was a very famous hacker that went to jail. And then when he came out of jail, he came to the good side, to the white side, to the light side instead of the dark side. And he's a very famous consultant now. Some good sites there, socialengineer.org. This is all around social engineering and the psychology side of things. And the blog at KnowBefore.com, always very interesting content out there. And KnowBefore is a great system. We use KnowBefore a lot from a platform point of view. So some good resources out there that I encourage you to go and have a look at. Yeah, so thanks. That's the presentation. So if you want to contact us, you can send me an email, ger@goodsecurityawareness.com, or go to my website, goodsecurityawareness.com. Yeah, so I reckon it's probably time for questions now.
All right. Ger, first of all, thank you so much. That was a wonderful session. I'm pretty sure at this point of time, with a lot of attacks happening, such topics have become much more prevalent and important than any time before. We've got a question from Haris Mohammed. Although every organization will have a certain level of risk appetite or risk acceptance, but would there be a baseline that every organization needs to have in terms of cyber risk? And who would determine that cyber risk baseline for organizations based on the industry they're operating? So it's actually a hard question.
Yeah. Yes, every organization should definitely have a baseline. Sorry, I'm going to have a sip of water. Every organization should know what their kind of baseline is. You know, we call it, the baseline that you're probably referring to, we call it the risk appetite. And every organization should think about, you know, what kind of risk do I want to take? How much risk am I willing to accept? And what is acceptable for me? And then think about, you know, what kind of security do I have to put in place to make sure that that risk that I have that stays below that level, right? That's important to think about. It could be that you have certain requirements as an organization. So, for example, if you're a financial organization, you could have your, you know, PCI DSS kind of standard that you need to comply with. So there'll be all kind of technical controls and security awareness also that you need to put in place because of that standard. But also think about the human side of things, right? What kind of risks am I willing to accept, right? Do I really need to have people to think about two-factor authentication or not, or about phishing emails or not, or, you know, about good passwords or not? But what I see is that most organizations will need that level, that kind of basic level of all these security measures. So I hope that answers the question.
Right. Harissa, did that answer your question? Right, we'll just wait for his message. I've got a question for you, Ger. Now, with the current amount of ransomware that's happening, and especially considering 2021, we've actually seen some big names like the Kaseya ones, the other attacks. How effective do you think these security awareness programs have proven to be? I mean, have you seen the difference before and after, and is there any personal takeaway that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first of all, it's going completely crazy with all those ransomware attacks nowadays, right? I think the the average like small to medium sized business has something like an attack every day or something like that. So there's lots of attacks, and the average over the last 2021, the average amount of ransom was in the millions of dollars, like especially for those big companies, right? like a small company, wouldn't survive that. It would be like impossible. And security awareness is definitely a good control there, but it should not be one of the controls. There should be more out there than just security awareness. But what I see is that when we start to work with organizations that don't do any kind of awareness training at all, and we do that baseline test, for phishing tests, for example, usually we see up to about 30 to 35% of the people that click on links or open attachments in emails that they shouldn't. And after we do probably around like 3 months or 6 months, it goes down to usually around 10 to 12%. So from 35 to 10 to 12%. And after a year, when we do a year long of awareness training and regular phishing tests, we see that it goes down to around 5%. So from 35% down to 5%, that is a big drop, and it is definitely, this reduces your risk, the likelihood of having a ransomware and a ransomware attack enormously. Yeah.
Yep, that actually kind of makes more sense, because going from 35% to 5% is something incredible, is what one can say based on the current threat landscape. Guys, if you have any questions, you can put it up in the chat. Oh, anybody else has any other questions? All right, Ger, I think we don't have any more questions from our audience today. Once again, thank you. I think there's one from me, Sam. Sam, can you unmute yourself and ask the question, if that's okay? Or do you want to put it in the chat and we are fine as well?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, Ger. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks.
Nice long time.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation. I really like all your articles and security articles you write. So yes, I'm interested to move my career into security, and I've done few of my cloud security certifications. And so I'm trying to move out from system engineering into security. So what would be your suggestions from me as an individual to start off with if I look into initial level of career move sort of thing?
As in, like, what kind of a role you would get into?
So like would be initially would be like security analyst sort of role, information security analyst.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good start. Absolutely. If you have the possibility, for example, I don't know where you currently work, but if you have the possibility, for example, to go into a role, for example, in a team where you could do some security analysis, that would be great. Maybe also if if you're in an IT department and you would be able to be, for example, in the service desk and do kind of security related work. So you work on kind of incidents and do security related work. That definitely helps to get that experience. And yeah, if you you get in, if you have the possibility to be in like a security analyst type role, to start to learn more about what people are doing and why people are doing it, and what kind of incidents there are out there, and the different attacks and the kind of the different vulnerabilities in the environment. To learn about that would definitely help. And then, yeah, if you have enough kind of experience, you can think about getting these certifications like CISSP or CISM, or get more kind of education and certification around it. And then it's easier then to find other roles in more of a, it depends on what you want to do. There's so much different roles out there. The security is such a diverse area. You can go to like very technical when you could do the whole pen testing and those kind of things, or you can go more into the human side of things and do security awareness, or in the management kind of security manager type role. And there's lots of different roles out there. Yeah.
No, nice. Thanks for valuable suggestions. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, because internally at the moment it's bit harder. So I'm just looking something outside. So probably I'll have to upskill myself and maybe do some.
Yeah.
Projects.
Yeah. Good idea.
Thanks, yeah. Yep.
No
Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, I'll put the link of my website in the chat. So if you want to have a look at that, if you want to reach out to me, whatever, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can put a message on the website, something like that. Don't hesitate. All right.
Right. So guys, yes, that's the end of the session. We're once again can't thank you enough to have made your presence felt on our platform. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
If there would have been more people, obviously. But then on the other hand, we'd also request you to consider this also as a future journey as well, and make your presence felt for the future sessions. That would be great. And thank everybody who's made for today's session. Again, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ger. You take care of yourself and stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye. Cheers.